So we're going to turn our attention now to the least common multiple. The least common multiple is the smallest number that is a multiple of two or more numbers. The least common multiple is made up of the words least, common, and multiple. So let's break that apart. Let's start with the word multiple. What is a multiple? Well, I always think about the multiplication table. For example, if we were to talk about the multiples of 3, we would simply be thinking about our 3's. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 24, and so on. And then if we were to think about the multiples of 4, they would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, and so on. So those are our multiples. Think about the multiplication table. So what is a common multiple? Well, when you list the multiples of two or more numbers and you find that same value in both lists, then that means they have those numbers in common. So let's look back at our multiples of 3 and 4 and see which numbers they have in common. When I look at my 3's and I look at the 4's, I see the number 12. The number 12 is in both rows. And then I also see the number 24. The 24s are in both rows of multiples. So the numbers 12 and 24 are in both lists, so that makes those the common multiples. It's what they have in common. So if we put all that together and we say, well, what is the least common? Of course, the word least means the smallest. So it's simply the smallest of the common multiples. So we're going to look at our multiples, find the ones they have in common, and then to find the least common, it's going to simply be, it's the first number that we come to in both rows. So in our previous example, we said that we saw the 12s and we saw the 24, but what is the least or the smallest common multiple? Well, it would be 12. And it would be written like this. The LCM, or the least common multiple, and we put our digits in parentheses of 3 and 4, is 12. So what if we were given this problem that said, find the least common multiple, the LCM, of 8 and 10? Well, the first thing I need to do is list the multiples of 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, 64, 72, 80, 88, and of course the list goes on. And then I would list the multiples of 10. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Well, what do they have in common? What numbers do you see in both rows? When my eyes look down this row, I see 40s. I also see 80s, and of course if we were to continue our row of multiples on down, I'm sure we would find more. But my question asked me to find the least, that means the smallest number that they have in common. Well, if I look at 40 and 80, of course the 40 is smaller. So my LCM, or my least common multiple, of 8 and 10 is 40. What about this one? Find the least common multiple of 3 and 5. The first thing I do, list my multiples. For the 3, I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, and on and on and on. And for my 5s, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, on and on and on. And so my eyes are going to look down this list to see what they have in common, and there's one. Right there. It's the first one that I'm going to come to that they have in common, and I have the 15. So my least common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. If I think back to the definition of a least common multiple, it said that it was the smallest multiple of two or more numbers. So I can actually find the least common multiple of more than two numbers. And in this case, it is asking me to find the least common multiple of 4 6, and 8. I first need to start by listing my multiples. So my 4s, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, and they go on, but let's stop there. Then my 6s, 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and 42. And then I need to list my multiples of 8. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, and 56. So now I need to come up with my least common multiple of all three numbers. So let's look at the 4. Let's first start by comparing the 4 and the 6. Well, when I do that, I'm looking in my rows of 4s and my 6s, and oh, there's a 12 and there's a 12. But when I look down at my 8s, I don't see a 12. So those won't work. It would not be the 12. Well, let's compare my 4 to the 8, see if that helps. I have 4, 8, 16. Let's look down at my 8s. I have 8. Oh, there's an 8 and an 8. But there's not an 8 in my 6s. So those won't work either. Let's continue down my 4s. I have a 16. Ooh, here's a 16. But there's not a 16 in my 6s. So that won't work either. Okay, let's keep going. In my 4s, I see a 24 and a 24. Let's look in the 6s. Oh, there's a 24 also. So the first number that I come to, or the smallest number, or the least number, however I want to word that, the least number that I come to that is in the 4s, the 6s, and the 8s is 24. So I would have the least common multiple of 4, 6, and 8 equals 24.